Hello and welcome to Creatives on Speed, where we talk to creative thinkers, doers and makers from all walks of life about their work and their inspirations. And today I'm talking to the artist Matt Jukes. Hi Matt, how are you doing?
Hey, I feel the need to wave. It's a Zoom call.
I'll wave back. There you go. The word artist can take on many forms. So explain a bit about the work you do and all sorts of things that you do.
All sorts of things about the work I do. So as an artist, I like to explore the idea of memory and the way in which we hold memories inside objects and how memories are able to kind of take us back to that particular time through a piece of work. So all of my work is about trying to capture a emotional memory of a place rather than a figurative representation of that. And the sort of mediums I work in is everything from printmaking all the way through to photography and painting.
Yeah, your work's amazing. I mean, I'm good at fangirl you now. I'm a huge fan of your work. It's very atmospheric, it's moody, it's just got there's so many beautiful colors you use. I'm a big fan of color.
Very emotive. So what I'm trying
Yeah.
to do is capture those feelings and and use all these different techniques. Use color, use the texture, use the style to be able to create that emotion and to make it emotive. Because as you say, color is really interesting. There's so much wonderful color theory. There's so much meaning behind every color. And it's those things there which very much attract me to be able to pull these cues, to be able to pull out a memory of my head, create a visual of that, and then hand that to you as the viewer to be able to look at that and for you to see that, feel the same emotion, but then to be able to apply your own place to that.
Yeah.
That's one of the kind of great joys with all of my work is there's a certain energy which goes along with being able to make that connection.
Yeah, that's cool. We're going to be sharing some links to your work in the show notes below so people can go and delve into it. But I'm going to take you back a little bit into the past and talk about when you were growing up. So what parts of sort of creativity or creative pursuits play in your childhood?
Interesting. I think in my childhood, the kind of creative pursuits, I mean, there was always coloring. There was always some kind of making of things. I mean, but my mother has a whole lot of bad ashtrays of bad pottery experiments gone wrong. And weirdly enough, she kept them all, which is an interesting point. At what point do you throw out your artist's bad art?
Is
That's
there such a thing as bad art? That's a question for you.
Maybe my process has moved on since I was 6, fashioning like coils out of clay. I think that creativity was always there. Interestingly enough, I think my father is an incredibly creative man, but he would definitely not identify as artist or anything like that, because I see that creativity comes out of like problem solving. An amazing thing which my father can do is see something and then turn that into something else. For example, he saw a lawnmower and turned it into a tree shredder thing. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, hazardous as you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
But that kind of creative thinking. But what I love is that I once took him to the Tate Modern, and he was more interested in the building and the bricks and the structure than he was with the art on the walls. And it was one of those moments which made me realize, oh, you're creative. That this is a different sort of creative to the way which I am, but we are both solving problems.
Yeah.
He's solving problems of how to get rid of his tree when not having a tree shredder, and I'm sort of solving the problems of how to communicate with people.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think when we think of creativity, I very much think of this. A lot of it's the ability to see things can be something else.
Mm.
Whether it's it's words or it's visual. It's just the ability to not just, oh, that's just what I'm seeing. You can see something else behind it.
Yeah,
You can perceive it in a different way. And it sounds like your father was amazing at that.
exactly. Are you familiar with the artist who goes by the name of Morley? He's a street artist who paints pictures.
Yeah, I've heard his name. Yeah. Tell
One
me
of the
more.
pieces I have inside my studio up against the wall is like one of his pieces, and it says, "Creativity is the curse of seeing the world how it should be."
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a great quote.
I was like, that's amazing. That's the curse, because everywhere I look, I'm like, oh, you could do that like that, or you could do that like that, or that like that. So that kind of energy of being able to use that creativity to see all these things, and then it's channeling that into what's the right things for your creativity. Because I've come to the conclusion that for the thousands of ideas I have every day, they aren't all my ideas. They aren't all things which I have to do. So I've a new approach since this whole like COVID thing. I've decided that I'm going to let these ideas out. So when I have these kind of crazy ideas, I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's share them with the world. Maybe they will resonate with somebody. They will take that and turn that into their own idea, make that bigger.
I think that's really important as well, because I think I'm a bit like you. I have lots of ideas, and it's making those choices as to which ones you spend the time on.
Yeah.
Like, and which, but then I'm also, I sort of have a battle with, okay, I need to focus on this journey and this way of producing work. But then there's a sense of like, no, I actually want to share everything with everybody, because who knows, someone else might take it and do something better with it, you know.
I think at different points of the creative journey, which we are all on, I was going to say creative career. That just doesn't sound quite right. But um, it becomes important to be able to say no. Say, no, I'm going to focus on this. This is this is the thing which I'm trying to achieve. I'm going to push everything else aside for a moment before coming back to this, or that crazy thing or that crazy thing. But in other points, I do think it's all about saying, hey, there's all these things which I want to do, and I can do all of them.
Yeah. So in terms of like finding your, artistic or creative voice, you obviously, do a lot of prints. And when did you start to sort of hone your work down to working in that medium?
Well, this is really interesting. So because I wear lots of different hats, one of the other hats I wear is I work inside a advertising agency, and I look after the creative work inside of all of the digital things. So, all those annoying banner ads and all those websites and all those sorts of things there. I've looked after those, and I got incredibly frustrated with that because I wasn't actually making anything. I mean, sure, some light splashed on a screen somewhere, but I wasn't actually getting ink up to my elbows, making a mess, pushing things around. So what I did is I took a evening course in like printmaking some 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And it's from that point there where I felt the need to actually make a mess, get something done, is where I started my journey to become an artist. So and through that process, I experimented with different sorts of printmaking before I discovered the machine in the corner which no one used, and used that in a completely irresponsible way, which has allowed me to be able to create this voice and to be able to put these thoughts which I've been having about the memory, and being able to look back as well as look forward from that memory point, to be able to find the visual language to be able to support that. So, no, go on.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I remember when we first met at the other art fair, and one of the things that's key in your work, I think you said, was the influence of music. I mean, and I think I remember saying to you, like, your pieces are very evocative of sort of sound waves as well. So there's that whole mood going on. To explain a bit more about the music influence.
Well, in my mind, music and sound are very much a trigger for those emotions. So I'll know when a piece is done when I have that trigger in my head of what the piece is actually like singing to me, because that then will instantly give me a moment. So every piece which I do always has a couple of lyrics from the song out of it, and because I have quite the vast kind of record collection, they are like the third verse of the B-side and those kind of weird things. But if you do punch them into Google, you will hear the music, or you can find the music there. A really kind of interesting side point upon that is all of these kind of shapes and forms, as you say, you see in the sound waves, because you work in sound and those things. Or this whole tranche of work actually started out with me trying to recreate the cover of Joy Division's first album.
Right. Yeah.
is Unknown Pleasures, which for all the people at home who don't know, fantastic band from the late 70s who had whose album cover was designed by Peter Saville, someone else you should look up, everyone at home. And on the front cover they had the sound of a dying star, which is ironic given the band. But it was a series of sound waves, and it's made up this landscape. And it was that thought there, it was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then I was doing my version of that, and it spawned into a great body of work from there.
Yeah. And yeah, as you were saying, you have a little, when your pieces are up, you have like the lyrics on there, and I think that's really sort of insightful. Do you get a lot of questions about like why you share those lyrics with the pieces?
Well, I get a lot of people asking me if I'm a poet, which I'm like, well, yeah, kind of, maybe. But what I find really interesting is how quickly people lock into a memory with just a couple of words. And also because some of the words I use are used by different people. So it's really interesting to see who's the will.i.am fan versus who's the Biggie fan. And it's just a different audience all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So it's those kind of things which I really like, because once again, going back to this idea of memory, different people are able to see the same thing or hear the same thing and think of something else. And I love that idea.
Yeah, I'm always really fascinated by that whole kind of, everyone could be looking or listening to the same thing, and yet because of everything they're bringing to the party, everything they've seen and experienced up to that point, they've got a whole different set of, sort of processes going on in their head. I think that's fascinating.
But what I find even more fascinating is with your own like memories and your own thoughts, because of the way which our brains work and how the kind of neuroplasticity of our brains, that's a mouthful for you, isn't it? But whenever you remember something, whatever you are like remembering right now, because you looked up and to the left, so you actually thought of a memory, that memory there is only a memory of the last time you remembered that. So each memory you have is just the memory of the last time. So you're building up these chains and rewriting that memory over and over again. And obviously you change between each of these memories. So the thing which you're writing is changing and changing every time, which once again, that means that your memory is so incredibly unreliable.
Yeah, it is.
And even when you're 100% sure of that's how it happened, someone else there from that point will more than likely see it in a completely different way.
It's really interesting when you come to think about prints, because you do a lot of monotypes, don't you, which are one-off prints, aren't they?
So it's kind of like using the printing press like a paintbrush. So there's only going to be one of them. There can only be one of them. I'm not making a plate or a screen or anything like that to be able to do multiple. So in my case, I'm actually inking up the bed of the press itself and then making my marks into it.
And what was your decision process for doing that as opposed to using sort of other types of printing?
Well, honestly, it first started about for speed.
Yeah.
Because I was working on plates and I would spend a year kind of etching away and working my way through it. And by using this press here, which is a proofing press, which is designed to put on ink fast and to be able to test your test your type, that enabled me to move quickly and to be able to put ink onto the page quickly. Then I decided that no, I want to do that over and over and over and over and over again, which is where the time process kind of comes into it. But I quite like that sort of like yin and yang of that. I can make a mark quickly, but then I can take that, I can work over the top of that. So once again, it's more like painting than printing.
Yeah, exactly. And you just invested in a rather large piece of equipment.
I just bought my very own printing press. So as with most printmakers, they will go to a studio, they'll work in a community studio. And I've been looking for my own press for a little while. So I have a brand new German iron baby, which is 2.5 tons and 2.5 meters long. So
wow.
it's big. It's very big, but what I really like about this is that it enables me to print even larger than I worked with before. So a lot of my work is large scale because I like the idea of creating windows and doors into these worlds which I create. So the prospect of being able to go larger was just something which I could not say no to. So I was like, yeah, got to do this, even if that means finding a new studio.
Which you've mentioned in it, probably that you might have to do. So,
yes.
Yeah. So I mean, that's really exciting, because having that sort of access to your key piece of equipment is going to be really interesting to see where your work's going to take you. What's on the cards there?
Well, for me, this piece of equipment is, yes, it's going to enable me to work at a bigger size. Yes, it's going to help me not have to try to keep to the slots inside the studio. I can work at any time and all those things. So I have a whole lot more freedom. But on the other side, this piece of equipment will allow me to build a community. So something I think is really important to creativity is seeing how different people work and having those discussions about the work, and even just the, oh, that's kind of interesting. I might steal that little bit to that bit and bring it together. So what I'm hoping to do is, out the back of this printing press, is find some other people to come and work on it with me, so that they can go and make some great art as well, and I can build up a bigger community of friends. So that creative conversation, I think, is vital for any person who's working in the creative industries.
So that collaboration and that, thing that we've really missed in 2020 is sort of those conversations that just happen, that lead to an idea. One thing I want to ask you is that, obviously, with printing, there's some technical aspects to it that you have to get right. What are the sort of tips and tricks that you've picked up along the way that have been super helpful to your work?
Super helpful is make sure your fingers are away from the roller as it's going through. First tip for anybody, that's quite painful and gets quite messy. Tips and tricks about using the printing press. I think that, without getting kind of too kind of technical and things, I think the biggest thing is to spend time with the press and to be able to learn how it works for you. Because everybody uses these pieces of equipment in different ways. I mean, like I said, I'm not using it for its intended purpose. I'm doing it the wrong way, inverted wrong way. But I found my process by making a mistake. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's interesting. Like they always say, all those kind of great discoveries aren't eureka moments. They're more, that's
Yeah, cool. We learn so much from mistakes, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is the important thing, and also with printmaking, is don't have too much of an idea of what you want the end product to be, because it needs to be a dance between you and the printing press, because the printing press will never do exactly what you want it to do.
And I love that. It's a bit of a dance. That's amazing.
Yeah, but what that does is it gives you serendipity, and for me, serendipity is really important, because what I'm doing is I'm putting down lots and lots of layers over the top of each other, and I'm never quite sure how much is going to go down, how much is going to come up. So even though I have a destination in mind, I think it's okay to, well, it's took me a long time to be able to work out this, is even though there's a destination, it's okay to deviate and go off and do something else.
I can't imagine you're someone who's ever stuck for an idea, Matt. But if you are sort of thinking about, like, maybe a color choice or something like that, what are your sort of influences or inspirations that you pull from regularly?
That's an interesting thing, because I think I'm quite regularly stuck for ideas.
Oh.
For me, the kind of best thing which I did was buy Brian Eno's cards. Do you know the oblique strategies?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of those, actually. Yeah.
And for me, that instantly made me embrace chaos. So with my work, there is definitely a whole lot of trying to control chaos. So I went through a whole stage of trying to get the colors perfectly flat and to be able to define each layer perfectly. But now I'm trying to progress further on from that and just saying, yeah, I'm going to take the like tear of this paper. I'm going to take this. So it's not so much about the individual mark, but to take that step back and see how it all works together.
So 2021, what does that hold for you in terms of obviously getting to know your new piece of equipment?
I think I'm going to take a step back a little bit so that I have time to get to know this piece of equipment, so that I don't feel the rush and the push to be able to do all the shows, do the exhibitions and things like that, so that I can create some new work. So I think whilst that's happening, I'm probably going to do some more painting. I've been very, very interested in the way which about creating objects which change. And like the changing memory which we were talking about before, I've been looking at different ways to be able to show that changing nature of the way which we like remember things. So
yeah, you've been working quite a lot with some different types of paint, haven't you?
At different temperatures, it responds and becomes different colors. So it starts to become, it gives them more of a textural element, which I find really quite interesting. And I've also been looking at various things like lenticulars, which are those things when you look from a different angle. You probably had a ruler when you were a kid, which you played with. So the idea of being able to create moving things, and I'm also in the mix of a collaboration with a fashion designer. So I kind of like the idea of working out the layering and working out the movement as the person wears the dress.
Well, I'm fantastic. I very much look forward to seeing some of that. That's going to be amazing. Thank you so much for talking to us today, Matt. I really, really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope that we'll get to see each other at an art fair or something in real life soon. So. Well,
I hope that you're going to come down to my studio and meet my new press.
Yes, I would love to. And I've never actually done any printing of that kind. So maybe you can give me a bit of a tutorial.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Community.
Yes, exactly. Cool. Thanks very much, Matt.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.